Okay, we're recording. Mac?
Okay. Hey, Alex. It's so great to be here, and I really enjoy this opportunity to talk about Dwight D. Eisenhower and accepted with my book, of course. And he would be pleased to be part of and celebrating the 250th anniversary. He'd be honored to be, and would have wanted to be that. One of the first things that needs to be said, since we're talking about Kansas, is that Eisenhower was born in Texas, and his brother, that's what I'm sure most people have probably heard that by now, but he was the only one of the Eisenhower boys that wasn't born in the state of Texas. His older brothers were born down in Hope, two of the older brothers, and the young ones were born in Abilene, and he was born in Denison, Texas. Family returned to Kansas when he was a year and a half. So quite a few historians make the mistake of saying the family moved to Kansas. No, they returned because Ike's father had been here since the age of 14, and his mother had been here since the age of 21. So they were just returning to Dickinson County. And he used to, when his brothers would tease him about being
Mac, can you unmute yourself?
let me start over.
Nope. We were
Temporarily
there.
muted. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So,
The book that I've written is, it's not the normal biography. Because those are being written, that have been written, there's still more coming out that come out every 2 or 3 years about Eisenhower. But mine is 25 chapters that stand alone. Can put the book down for 2 weeks and get back to it and haven't missed anything, because each chapter is a different vignette about Eisenhower. Little known fact, something it needs to be debunked, or something that you've never heard about, or something that maybe you do need to hear about, and I put it in proper perspective, so to speak. And it's an easy conversation book, but it has 480 footnotes, which well documented, and that's why the University Press of Kansas published it. And it's just and the chapter titles are intentionally provocative too. I want people to read the chapter and say, "Oh my goodness, I need to do that." And some of the chapters are just 6 or 8 pages long. There's one chapter that's 40 pages, just depending on the seriousness of the topic, I guess. So and each of which it was sort of this idea of deep dive and that one thing. But the genesis of the book is that I was in charge of the archive section of the Eisenhower Presidential Library, and so I was having a thing on the pulse. I had a staff of a dozen people who were on reference requests and research room scholars, and finally what academics were interviewing, what the journalists, media, general public, school teachers, students. And things came across my desk, and over the years I started thinking, this is a lot of questions that people wanted to know the answer to. And then I was also speaking about Eisenhower at public libraries, going out to historical societies, Rotary clubs, and so forth. And so people would come up to me afterwards and ask a question off the record. And so I got that information too. So I eventually had a good feel for what people thought they knew about Ike and wanted to know about Ike. And there were some things that people didn't know that I thought could be included too. So this book, I think, is groundbreaking in some ways. For example, the Ike nickname. And historians have just said all along, well, Eisenhower was a mouthful, and so Ike is kind of like the word Eisenhower that begins I and the liberation, and that's not true. The Eisenhower, the Ike nickname is actually an ethnic slur. It's short for Isaac. And I grew up as a boy in Abilene at the time of the great influx of immigrants from Eastern Europe with long-sounding names like Eisenhower. And many of them were Jewish, and so Ike is short for Isaac, and so it was kind of a cultural put-down, which was acceptable at the time, unfortunately. But it was sort of like Bubba to go or Beefus or something like that. But it was an affectionate. It's the most affectionate ethnic slur that they were at the chapter. But I think that my book is the only one actually has the true origins of the Ike nickname, but it became the most famous nickname in the world, and so I like Ike buttons and everything else. So it's still part of the Ike historiography. Very interesting. One of the
So,
things we talked about. Go ahead.
so why did you, what were some of the most important chapters for you as you wrote them?
Well, I thought some of them were just a natural thing. I was a great cook. He liked to cook. He learned to cook at home. It got him out of the housework. There was an all-boy household there in Abilene, all boys, but he enjoyed cooking, and I found out things he'd get out of him. He had to mop the floors often if he was cooking. And when he went on camping trips with his buddies, leading to definitely cook. And it became quite a quick, and it was a good thing because he later met maybe Geneva Dowd, and so he said, wife, who had gone to finishing school, and his mother told her, honey, I don't learn how to cook, otherwise you'd be in the kitchen all the time. You'd be tied down to the kitchen, and no one took that to heart. So it was good that I could cook because the in his repertoire is mayonnaise and fudge, and so I got married. And so when I joined the Army, one of the first things he did was went to Cooks and Bakers School, because his feeling was that our soldiers is very, not getting paid much, but he's at least square meals a day. And so throughout his whole career, military career, he didn't expect kitchens, and it wasn't about having glistening pots and pans hanging from the ceiling over the counter. It was about having good food. And he could taste it and critique and loads of lieutenant, this mess sergeant, he wasn't thinking to keep fucking and so there was that. And then there's stories about that as a result of, and the West Point yearbook talked about Ike, the Swedish Jew, bigger than life. And that started the rumors that Ike was Jewish. That's one of the chapters that I talked about, and he wasn't. But one of the, I think he wrote in Eisenhower once said, well, it's too bad we weren't Jewish, because that would have been good. And then there's another rumor out there that needed debunking, but Eisenhower had black ancestry. His mother came from Virginia, and the wedding pictures, he's got a little orange skin, she's got a flat nose, because she actually broke her nose as horse running as a kid. That's so, that his English, that the family had black ancestry. And in my chapter, I explained that and discussed that, and basically some time on. But it's interesting. I talked to two Eisenhower granddaughters about it. She's an Eisenhower, and I told her about it. She hadn't heard of it, and she said, her reaction was, oh, that was unique. It's not kind of amazing. That's very positive and heartwarming. And the other, just being there, Julian said, Mac, I think it's probably cool. Anyway, we'll have to wait for her book to come out. So anyway, but in my book, I just found it. But those are the kind of things. The original title of my book was going to be Debunking Eisenhower Myths and Theory. I'm happy that the publishing decided to utilize the better title. And it was interesting too about Milton Eisenhower, the president's younger brother. He was president of Kansas State, and 9 years younger. He wrote an article on what Kansas means to me. And he said this, it's about Kansas. He said, we are that town of Kansas, where agriculture and industry, and it seems best suited to the maintenance and democratic attitude. We have a state spirit, which is a movement of Puritan morality, Southern chivalry, and Western individualism. No state is more accurately represented for an American as a whole than Kansas. And he is high on Kansas being right in the middle of the country and the middle of everything that convention stands in.
So you've got a lot of stories about Mack. What was something that surprised you the most as you learned about Dwight D. Eisenhower? What was something that surprised you?
I think probably the fact that you think about the secret recording of conversations in the Oval Office, which thing comes to mind? Well, it's a Nixon, but little announced to the rest of the world and to our staff at the library until much later at the time I was there, when I was there, but I think several years. Eisenhower also reported conversations, and not very many of them, and it was old technique that was get developed that was met for his tasting the Secretary of Kentucky, others and stuff like that. But and then the currency conversations at Columbia University, and then maybe at NATO headquarters in Paris. But the fact that Eisenhower could be a political animal when it came to that. Stephen wasn't just a simple country boy, he became a general. So he was concerned about the historical record and the accuracy as he was saying what and so forth. So it probably a bit surprising. But those recordings, by the way, reveal none of the meetings were important. They were just one-on-one conversations usually. But the thing that came through of them was Eisenhower was always putting scripture in every single conversation. And the recording survived. And there only a couple of them. It's his lunch of Christ in every conversation. He knew the Bible forward and backward. He'd read it twice as a kid. His family had Bible readings, and it's interesting too that the Reverend Billy Graham was once asked. He was the most religious president needed when he was from Eisenhower on up to Donald Trump's first friend. And you would think that Billy Graham, he didn't actually probably story Jimmy Carter, but no, he said, Dwight D now. It's because he was time he spent around Ike, and they were always talking religion and his gospel and that prophet from the Old Testament and so forth. And so he had a good respect and admiration for the university of Ike. And you think about it, when he invaded Europe, and had an invasion, it's called a crusade, of Europe. And his letter, his message to his Philly sailors and admirals was about to embark on the great crusade in Europe. And he closed by saying, let us beseech the blessings of the Almighty God as the undertakers into cloud. And so he put in godly trust on the dollar bill during his administration, added under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. So but he was not baptized until the age of 62. Because he'd gone to River Brethren being raised, but then when he, at West Point, cadet chapel, that was mandatory, but after leaving the army, he didn't document his orders in the church very often. His funerals and weddings, did something like that. He became the president. After he said, I'm not going to church before I'm elected. I don't want people to get political, but after I'm elected, he joined the special seats and finally got baptized for the first time at age 62.
Wow.
Very
You also said in your book that he was a cultural warrior, and I noticed I just read today the last letter he ever wrote. Can you tie those two together?
Yeah, he was, has anybody heard that maybe the Kennedy Senator that became lunch is going to be renamed? Is anybody who hasn't heard that controversy? Well, let me just say, let me go on record and say, I'm for renaming the Kennedy Senator to become myself. It's the Eisenhower Senator for some minutes. Because I signed the legislation in 1958, he created. He was concerned that the nation's capital did not have the cultural attractions that a country should have. New York City had Broadway and film and theater and so forth, and concert halls. But Washington, D.C. was a sleepy little southern town, and he was elected in 1952. And he'd been the recipient of snide remarks from his contemporary in Europe. Well, we'll be coming over to the colonies. There's not much going on there culturally, but we'll look and see how you're doing. And so he thought that needed to change because he really respected the American culture. And he's the one that came up with the whole concept of a national cultural assembly first. And can assassinated this 1980 him. But he loved music. And the last letter he wrote, he was lay sick in Walter Reed Hospital for several weeks. And he wrote his last letter 3 days before he died. And it was to Irving Berlin, thanking him for decades and wonderful years because nurses and doctors and giving the best care they can. But they always have music in the background, and this time that's you and Mrs. Lady knows that I'm very sincere that. And don't bother me flying. Thank you. That letter is in the holies of the Eisenhower Library. Yeah, he gives you, he thought, and he sent 40 invests. It was illegal about the plight of putting blacks in America. He sent that overseas because that was, he thought, America's best to tell our own faults. It's their own fault in this whole war, in the propaganda that shows our coming to grips with these issues. So he, that's the origin of that.
And then he also got an Emmy Award, you said?
Yes, and that's kind of surprising. And he received an Emmy from the Arts and Sciences, people in LA, for his work for bringing the presidential press conference into the modern era. Prior to Eisenhower, White House press conferences, the president was speaking off the record. Journalists could get notes, but they couldn't quote the president directly. They had to get permission from the White House if they wanted to use that had a direct quote. And Eisenhower thought that this is not correct in this era of modern media. And so he had the first televised press conference in 1955. And after that, they were on the record, warts and all, whatever he said before the media, and the public didn't get to see it. And for that, he gave them an Emmy. But what he's interesting side story for that is they wanted him to come out to Los Angeles and accept the award and have a big ceremony, a black tie event or something. He said he was too busy. And he said, okay, you come to Washington, D.C., he's in the White House. And he said, oh, no, thank you. So they eventually sent it to a television station in Philadelphia. It's then drove it out to Gettysburg Farm and dropped it off at the farm. And the assistant press secretary back in Washington, and then he wrote to Kentucky, thank you for it. He wouldn't need the honor or the publicity for doing the right thing for America in terms of the media, which is, and I spoke widely. I don't need to give an attaboy to this. And that the Emmy is in the holdings of the Eisenhower Museum, but it is sometimes on display.
Speaking of on display, in your book, The Real IKE, you discussed extraterrestrials. And is it true that he covered up UFOs and alien visitors and a trip out to Area 51?
It actually was Edwards Air Force Base. But anyway, I'm not going to deny the existence of UFOs because I want book sales to remain high with that group of people. But he was on a golf vacation in Palm Desert, California, and actually broke a crown on Saturday night and had to have a late night emergency dental appointment. But he UFO through the levers, and he claimed that he was whisked over to Edwards Air Force Base in California, in the LA area, and we went out to a remote hangar and looked in the refrigerated storage unit, but there saw the remains of the Roswell alien. And he got briefed into the UFO program and was returned to the cover. So that's the story. And the UFO believers and the coming out in the Eisenhower part of Philip. Actually, one of Ike's own great granddaughters, because he's a key believer, and he's actually been figured out because the border and the stage guy. But I discount it. They're the genders to did the work, testified that, hey, I did that, and that had been done, and it wouldn't have been physically possible. He got back in time for church at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the Air Force Base was 120 miles away, and it was on the state highway, so it didn't make sense that he did this, but it is. But in my chapter, I didn't really go on to talk about the fact that the Eisenhower Library has projects of legal file, which is the official Air Force spread at the UFO. Because the enigmas for the profit for the Air Force to get in charge of it, and it's going to be going to stealth aircraft that we were developing. So that was interesting, but still, so people can you see what the Project Blue Book said, and they said we need better reporting, we need more under-reporting, and we need more credible reporting of these events. There are things that are hard to explain. My own parents, I mentioned the book, my own parents, my mother and father saw UFOs in Alma, Kansas, where they worked at the Fuca. And they were normal people. My dad was a radar technician, and he worked with nuclear weapons, and my mother was a legal secretary. So these were not people that could easily fit for feeling, but then my mysteries. It's maybe when it was, but my speculation, maybe they saw, maybe there was drones, maybe it had been a drone. It wasn't what helicopters from Fort Riley, because they weren't moving like that, because thinking was dipping sideways and fast. But anyway, they didn't talk about it much. I witnessed this to it. But I said, Eisenhower, he created NASA. He launched the first American satellites. He started the Mercury astronaut program. Hopefully that's enough close encounters to most people. He brought us into discovery studies. So, but I'm not
Your
discounting
book
it.
does a Well, your book does a great job of talking about it and using primary sources. It's a really great read. Um, I was one that was a little afraid of UFOs growing up overseas. I don't know why, but it sounds like Ike has had his hands in lots of things, including he created the Finding Common Ground in Public Conversations, Eisenhower's American Assembly. Can you explain that and why he did that?
Yeah,
Why you think he did that?
well, he was, a lot of people don't know he was one of 9 U.S. presidents who were also presidents of the university. He was president of Columbia University for 5 years before he became U.S. president. And one of the things he created there was an organization called the American Assembly, and it wasn't a think tank, a policy. It's a meeting place where disparate groups of people were brought in to study an issue. Medical care, taxes, race relations, U.S. policy issues that needed to be studied. I mean, the rural and urban, Republican, Democrat, men and women, young and old, business, private enterprise, and just and people would sit down for engaged periods of long and the ultimate Venn diagram. Where do we have overlap? Where do we have common ground? Because we have some things that we can agree on. And we need to show publication. It's the ultimate Venn ground Venn diagrams organization. And it's still young. He's to fit Columbia University. So he's one of his proudest accomplishments. And he said he needed to have a dialogue in this country and not just call our people down and do this enemies and so forth. He had a strong message that it was today. We've done it. A lot of stuff is done.
Is that something that continues today in that way, or has it changed?
I, it used to be its own freestanding unit north of Columbia University and into the city, and I think now that it's been brought back into the university administrative building, it's probably not as active as it was when first went up there. But publications that publications library, you can go order back to the studies that they've done and so forth. So he just thought it was very significant accomplishment that lasting contribution. And one thing that I argue about is that the statue on the Eisenhower Library now, which is a wonderful Eisenhower statue, it's a military uniform, it's that 5 sides, like the Pentagon is held by the 5 Senate. But one of the panels could have been the fact that he was a university patient, and I think it should have been not even argued for that at the time. It was like, no, that it wasn't the biggest thing that I've ever did. And he was in the military service and he turned president to generally tensions and staff and so on. But also he's the university president. It was something that would have been worth it.
So you talk about the man that began in Denison, Texas, very young. His family moved back to Dickinson County, Kansas, and somehow he ended up in West Point, and then all hard leadership roles. When he was at West Point, would he have been an easy mark for future president? What was his life like at West Point?
Oh, oh. And he went to West Point. He didn't think he was going to make a military career. It was for a free education. The family didn't have any funds, and he'd been working twice, 2 years out of high school at Gulf Springs Springland and sending money to his brother Edgar, who's doing a law degree at Michigan. We always, and this opportunity to go to the military kid, and he always told brother Edgar, "You owe me 2 years of college. You never had to pay me back." And taught him, teased him about that the rest of his life. But his family were pacifists. So it was a little hard. His mother didn't go off to West Point. And she went up to Clyde before he knew it. And his brother knew it. But I think maybe it was just tells him. I could see he was proud of him. When he was worried, he was worried how he would do academically. He was a physical specimen. He was 5'10", 170 pounds, and he was an athlete. And when the harassment that they put the kids under, that didn't bother him. Again, his tongue was not cracking, and he would smile or laughing in the ranks, and then harassing you. He thought it was funny, and he was a tough cookie. And once he realized that he was well prepared academically by Abilene High School. He had Latin, he had history, and math, and so forth. So but he never told by a parent or an adult that he's not working up to his potential. And Eisenhower didn't work up to his potential at West Point academically. He was probably a little half of his class academically. Maybe he's like 40% or something like that. But when it came to discipline, the merits, he was down in the bottom 10%. If he just couldn't be bothered with, he was. I couldn't put my head on straight. I didn't always make enough bed. They kept me, touched me with my feet on the desk. I was late getting into the rank, and he actually, once got demoted. He was achieved the rank of sergeant. But the only thing he cadet ball or dance between the instructors got it, and they did a turkey trot, and he scored it so fast that more than her ankles said, maybe he part of his class, because he got the merit for that. And he was counseling, and went to another dance later on, did the same thing. But he was just in rank. The corporate and sergeant, he was busted. And out in his West Point, the AV community, that's an area bird. An area bird, if somebody walks the merits off, the area bird after his walking back and forth, for the 14 of each minute. And busted the Instacat, I think he'd been used at rank. But he was so popular and so well known. Everybody loved him. Then he injured himself. That was the best today. And football went against Top. And he was running back and had great promise. And for Ike, that was his life was over. About being an athlete, baseball and football, he's going to drop out of Weston. He was going to go to Argentina and become a gaucho. In restaurant too, he's going to be a cowboy down in Argentina. His snow cadets talked him out of that. They made him a cheerleader. Which is the yell leader. He was at practice and everything, and ensured that there's properly discipline and good sportsmanship and such. And then they actually made him the coach of the team varsity football team, which had never happened before. The cadet did that. Had always been an active duty officer of the faculty. And for once they had a win record. He's such a good coach. And he had that reputation as a good coach. And then when he was supposed to army assignments, the post commander wanted him not because he was promising working without you, but he was a good coach that could coach the post football team, and maybe they'd win the neighboring, a game against the rival post. And he thought he was very disappointed that he was wanted more for his coaching ability. And he can see prowess. But as it turned out, think about it, in his life, that was his great skill. Keeping a positive attitude, we're behind, we're going to win this thing. And he told people the battle of the bulls. There will be no pessimists around this table. They're going to VP Germans, and he would have had doubts, but he would have said, we're gonna pull this out. So his coaching skill turned out to be a great advantage to him. But he loved Western. We the honor country, and that was the model he lived with. He hadn't, uh, thought that was a special place to him.
And it seems like Abilene was a special place to him. He returned there. He had his presidential library there when Pennsylvania or Denison, Texas, or any number of places could have claimed it. What has his impact on Abilene, Kansas been, and how did he feel the limitations of being a hometown hero there?
Yeah, and let me just say about Ike was a child of the Wild West. Wild Bill Hickok was sheriff in 1871, 19 years before he was born. So when he was a kid growing up, there was still, he knew people, he knew old codgers in town that claimed to have been gunfights, and they probably thing in the 40s or 50s, they had witnessed gunfights firsthand, 20 of them, teenagers. And so he loved the Midwest background. And in fact, he has this great quote where he was speaking to the B'nai B'rith, the Jewish Anti-Defamation League in 1953, and he said, I was raised in a little town of which most of you have never heard, but in the West it is a famous place. It's called Abilene, Kansas. We had as our marshal for a long time a man named Wild Bill Hickok. If you don't know anything about him, you do Westerns. Now that town had a code, and I was raised as a boy to prize that code. It was anyone face to face with me disagreed. You could not sneak up on him from behind and do any damage to him without suffering the penalty of an outraged instinct to do it. And if you had him face to face and took the same risks he did, you could get away with honest imitation as long as the bullet was in the front. And John Eisenhower, the president's son, who worked with him in the White House, so he was in national security, said that information was in the dossier that the Peter check and people that pinned on him, they said he was Eisenhower in that business, and he was, he was the Wild West cowboy. I, for relaxation, I was like, read Westerns, thinking about Westerns, and there's Zane Grey and William Moore and people like that. I just asked I know we have copies of those in the Eisenhower Library. So just turning the street, I asked the people writing your archivist, the timeline can actually correct, and he wouldn't accept that. You have 43 Western paperbacks that Eisenhower had, and it gets you invented. These are from his time in Walter Reed Hospital when he was dying. So he was reading books for relaxation. The Westerns were an escape for him because the good guy, one guy coming in and saving the town, and the desperados, and the good guy. His favorite movie was High Noon, with Gary Cooper and Grace Kelly. I don't know if you know that story, but do not forsake me, my darling, it's still waiting, Billy. The bad guys are coming, the town is not rallying behind the sheriff. But that was my favorite film. So I think he really was, he was relaxed by reading these Westerns because they always had a happy outcome. Now, if there was a girl involved, then he could put it down and get a different one, but he didn't want to be rescuing maidens or anything like that. But it was manly thing. Actually, I wanted to become a gaucho leader, I'm sure. But that was the Wild West back then in Abilene. But you asked about Abilene honoring him. Well, we did. We have two statues. We have the Eisenhower statue. You have a boyhood statue in Little Light Park. Our city park is named for Eisenhower. Our city building is the Eisenhower City Building. If we have the best presidential library in the system, but there are limits. We have a Kennedy Elementary School, which was supposed to be the Eisenhower Elementary School, but it was opening in about 1964, Kennedy was assassinated. The other grade schools, the Lincoln and Garfield and the Kinlan, for the precedent, if the PTA voted, most folks, if they voted to name the school Kennedy, not Eisenhower. And that was particular hurt spot in Eisenhower maybe, but it would make sense. But as it turned out, it was Eisenhower that was say Ron Buffett is just a few years ago. And they built a brand new school, and that's the Eisenhower School. And it's the honor, and it's great, and he's got the most recent controversy that I heard about in the book. There was a proposal out to rename the main South Street in Abilene Eisenhower Avenue. It's Buckeye Avenue now because it's a dirt road that led up to the Buckeye community north of town. And that's federal, it's some federal little brother settlement up there 5 miles away. And it created such an uproar in town, and the town fathers elected not to do it because the people on Buckeye, they don't want to change business cards and mailing addresses and so forth. And they've done a lot of things on Eisenhower already, and so there were limitations and stuff on time here. But I think, I mean, Eisenhower was not the one who wanted Buckeye. He didn't really want that kind of adulation. In fact, he did the statue of Eisenhower that's on grounds at the library wasn't put up until after Hilton Eisenhower died. All the Eisenhower boards were gone because the Eisenhower didn't want to statue. Senator Harry Darby, there's the statue, and it's a very focus of the Hilton statue. It's not about statuary, memorialization, that sort of thing. The museum was for World War II veterans. Like about but he was so proud. He was so proud that he always, in his speeches, he always said, I come, the proudest thing I can say is I come to Abilene.
Which is a wonderful thing for us. And the right Abilene, Kansas. You've talked about him. In your book, The Real IKE, the way you wrote about him, there's so many things that make him familiar to people that we know in Kansas and have come through Kansas. Or I grew up in the military. There's a lot that reminds me of growing up there. And there's a bunch of different ways to remember him. And I honestly have really enjoyed your book. Before we open up to questions, how do you think I would want to be remembered?
And I do need to say, for listeners out there, the biggest elephant in the room, is that the phrase? Was you having an affair with his wartime driver to Summersby. And that's my longest chapter. That's 40 pages long, and it has 88 of the 400 footnotes. And I think I give the definitive answer that almost without a doubt did not occur. But I'm talking about the whole history of the allegations, and who Summersby was, and who said what, and what the historians have said, what the media said, what his Summersby's, what his fate said, what her best friend had said, what his with her and during the war, what his brother said, and that new information in that chapter. But I think that half the people, like when I talk to Eisenhower, half the people who never heard that allegation, teaches repression. But it's there above his head in the future, and so I think this is the book which can refer people to some hope. In fact, I had a historian tell me that last night when dinner with somebody who was doing research at the Eisenhower Library. He said, Matt, when somebody asks me about T. Summersby, I'm going to say, T. Teasley's chapter 11. That'll answer the question. So I think that was the ultimate compliment. But I think that was needed to be, some of the things in the book were not all positive, like recording the Oval Office and things like that. But it needed to be said because these stories could come up. And, there's other losses. He allegedly allowed up to 1 million German prisoners of war dies right after the war. Exposure and starvation. Well, it's not true, but that was an accusation.
You debunked that very well.
Yeah. So those are things to do. You have what your last question went off on the tangent here. You said something about and there's a lot of new information in the book that needs to be behind that kind of thing.
How do you think he would like to be remembered, though?
I think as a public servant who loved his town, loved his country, loved his family, loved his wife, and his decisions based on what was right for America. Do the honor country. He lived by that motto. And one thing that really struck me about Eisenhower, here he was a middle child, born alongside the railroad tracks in a small urban community, and then he goes on to go to city. But he was totally comfortable in his own skin. When he went to West Point, he was a little cocky, but he was basically extremely confident without being arrogant about it in life. And he could make a decision, that's a hard decision, knowing it wasn't going to be popular, but his motto was be the right thing, take the country. That was what he thought.
Yeah, you mentioned it the other day on our chat, so I appreciate you mentioning that again. Well, we're at 40 minutes through, and thank you for everybody sticking with us and being patient with us. If you have a question, you're welcome to use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. I think it's at the bottom of my screen. Or we could even try, you can unmute yourself and just ask Mack directly. And while we're waiting, I appreciated, you said something the other day about what influenced his painting, which he called daubing, and why he was able to pick it up so quickly. Can you tell other folks that while we wait?
That reminds me of one of my other favorite chapters. It's Ike and technology, it's called How Ike invented the internet and other neat scientific stuff. Because he was a self-proclaimed farm boy, although it was 3.5 acres, 3.5 to 2 acres. That's not quite a farm, but he was in the farming community. He grew up on a farm. He was repairing equipment with the baling wire and trying to get the combine fixed before it rains, things like that. He worked with the Bell-Strand Creamery, pulling levers, pulling 3 pound blocks of ice. When he goes to West Point, he could major in engineering, so he took engineering. Where he did high level math, chemistry, mechanical drawing, perspective. That's it that happened later on. And it's printed that he could really do the three-dimensional thing. But he was taking technically Texas. Then he was in the tank corps in World War I, and then he became a pilot. He was one of 3 presidents. He became pilot. With this one, George Bush II, and then Dwight Eisenhower. And so he was on the cutting edge of technology. And he was in the White House, including the office in the Pentagon called DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And it was high risk and high value. About this technology. And so it was a dream to, and they came up with what became the internet, which was installed in the Pentagon, the system to do talking to each other. And saying your wife died in just 3-4 months after he died. And he's like the prophet. And he's like to the promised land that he's the godfather of the internet. It wasn't out there. Actually, he's the godfather because he created the office that gave us the internet.
You told me that the other day, and I've been thinking about it since. Stefan asked, should Ike be up on Mount Rushmore? Do you think Ike should be up on Mount?
And I know that Stefan, he's my brother now. but he's gone from Nebraska. So that was from Stefan. Thank you. Yeah. My original artwork, when I designed my own cover, I had Ike's image hovering over Mount Rushmore, even though it was the cover. And I liked the cover that he was depressing at this trip. I think he's Mount Rushmore worthy, and I jokingly was saying, hey, as soon as we get a couple of those slaveholders off of Mount Rushmore, when they win for it, when he left the presidency, he was like 22nd at he was at the very top of the below average president. He was insulted, hurt, angry because, hey, 8 years of peace and prosperity, by golly, it didn't just happen that found people, but he made it look easy. And if the Eisenhower Library the files are open, people started to say, oh yeah, he's in charge. He was the decision. He delegated, but people were doing what he wanted done. I think Mount Worth. He's now ranked number 5 among the presidents, and maybe it could be among the top 40 young Westerners. But I think he's the first replacement for coming out of the movement. Some of his hairline showing, I think one of the people up there bald. I think it's something. That person. I think he's looking better and better all the time, and I don't know the. He's looking for a second after the 5 because you know he's kind of that. I think they usually kind of going down, and the more we find out about him, he was there at the height of the Cold War in the early years, and he went through his threats and picked up his states. And he gave us knowing about the military industrial complex, which still lives on. So he's, if you like to, yeah, you like to that. Good question.
He was definitely somebody who made the very best
And
of
you
his
know what?
life.
I didn't say this, but he spoke to my college graduation.
What?
Yes. So I got to see him, sitting back with the chiefs, but it was 3 years before he passed away. But, so I got to see and hear Dwight D. Eisenhower talk. And literally, I realized 13 years later, I'd be deputy director and presidential library. So I'm so honored about that. That he was a real icon and I think an amazing person, but a down to earth person. He was the kind of person that he liked people and wanted to be around people. They bridge and his mother who raised him, there was a man named Dudley across the street. He was an illiterate man, and he let him go out camping with him, and the guy taught him how to fish and skin animals and poker, percentages. So those were very trusting times, but he was just an all-American boy. And he was a man, he just, and another tweak of history there, then he met Mooney. He was 1925. He did the right thing and asked Mr. Dowd to Dowd and Chandler man. And if I say this way, everybody's out, Mr. Dowd, he said, and Mr. Dowd said, oh, I'd love to have him family. And I said, I have some more good news that I've applied to be in the Army Air Corps, the President on the Air Force, and they've accepted me. So I did a $50 more a month, hazard fee. So, and I was telling Mr. Dowd said, young man, nothing to make a decision to see my brother or to the airfield because I don't want a young widow on my hands. So I just believe in this technology and really part of the future. But he made the right decision. His family was the unhappy first lady. But also, if he joined the Army Air Corps, he would have been a three-star general in the Army Air Corps. He wouldn't have been a superior allied commander. That was a job for an infantry officer. He would have mayor planet. He would not have been president of the United States. So thank you, Mr. Dad.
There's I've still got a few more chapters to read, and I appreciate how you weave his Kansas roots into how he became the leader he was, even down to the poker, how he knew how to play kind of global strategic poker for peace.
And bridge, serves bridge play. And if there's going to be a second edition of my book, there's going to be a chapter on bridge. I've already been scolded by somebody who said, missed the boat, and I'll tell you that, but he just serious in that thing. You had to play.
Well, we are approaching the time that we need to kind of wrap up the recording, but I know you're going to be in Russell and Wichita. Do you want to tell folks where they can come see you and pick up your book?
Yeah, if anybody, and by the way, the book needs to go to Kansas, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, usually places, and it's that. But if you want to get it autographed, you can get Russell and get my Hines, get Lensburg, and get 14th, and get Wichita on August 3rd, and then the Topeka on September 26th. So you can track me down there, and you've got to describe it for you or for Uncle Bob who's in the ward or whatever the deal is. But I'm not trying to hawk this, but I think it's the city's rivalry and it's documented. The verbs on the back talk about how it's It's good. It's awesome. Enjoy.
It's been a fun book to read about, in many places, very serious times for not just Americans, but worldwide. So, Mac, thank you. And thank you to all the people who have joined us. We will save this recording and post it on our YouTube channel. It'll be posted on social media as well. And I want to thank you, Mac, author of The Real Ike. Do you have one thing you want to leave us with?
I just want to say Eisenhower would be so pleased that he was part of this commemoration to Kansas's role in celebrating America's 250 proof that he would have been all about that. And he's proud Kansas and proud America. So he's glad that he was represented among the books that he talked about and his views for our 250 Foundation.
Well, I like the way it sounds, and Stefan has says he likes Ike too.
Yeah.
So we like Ike. Thanks,
Thank you,
Stefan.
Thank you, Brother Steph.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. We hope you have a good night and keep an eye out for future events. Thanks so much. I'm going to stop the recording.